now we move on to our first session on the business context of circular economy. And may I now, which I will be moderating, and may I now request our panelists for the session to please come up on stage. Kushal Harjani, co-founder Doko Recyclers. Rikesh Gurung, founder and managing director of Green Road in Bhutan. Taylor Smith, founder and CEO of Clean City. And Tyler McMahon, co-founder and international advisor, Smart Pani. We have 4 diverse panelists with sort of from diverse backgrounds and they're all practitioners who are looking at circular economy and issues around circular economy, not just as something as a hobby, but they are looking at it as a business. So without much ado, maybe I'll start with Kushal on my far right in terms of what do you do and how do you relate to the whole concept of circular economy.
A very good morning to everyone. So circular economy at its heart, it's all about keeping materials and products in a usable form for as long as possible within the system, right? It's about closing the loop. And so for that, you need a stable supply of resources to production facilities as raw materials, and a shift away from mining virgin raw materials or to import materials, which is especially critical for a country like Nepal that is developing and considered, poor. And also, we're landlocked, so we are quite limited in the resources that we have. And one of the central pillars of a circular economy is an organized waste collection system. If you're not able to recover your resources from the system itself, then you're not able to close the loop. Our efforts are really centered around encouraging people to think beyond what we traditionally recycle in Nepal. So recycling is not a new system for us, But what we are typically limited to is we recycle newspapers, beer bottles, some metals. It's a very traditional thought process where, okay, these items are recyclable and then the rest is just simply discarded. When you think of waste as something to throw away, then you're essentially, it's no longer circular. But when you think of waste as something that is, it's a resource that has lost its utility in its present form, but still has utility in many other ways.
Namaste. I run a company called the Green Road. It's the first company in Bhutan that started recycling plastic waste. I use waste plastic in road construction. For waste entrepreneurs like ourselves, I believe that getting the idea, getting it done practically, I think that's best for any circular economy to, run or function. Learning about circular economy works best when you put your idea into practice, And what my business, how it started as a passion, now it is actually, giving back to the society and then, making it possible, Now, for every ton of plastic that I was extracting from the landfill, I was creating a space for 7 cubic meters for other biodegradable waste to be dumped in the landfill. So that way, we were able to increase the lifespan for another 8 years now. So when I said I have reused 400 tons of plastic waste, I was able to reduce 400 tons of bitumen. That comes to about almost 200 million worth of bitumen. So this is what we are doing in Bhutan. So we are working, and it's all about, of course, it's about money, but at the end of the day, it's all about coming together, sharing, learning, and this is it. This is what I've been doing.
My name is Taylor Smythe, and I'd like to just say that thank you so much for inviting me here. It's really an honor to be here with all of these panelists. So I think it's really important that we shift away from the linear take, make, waste, extractive industrial model and towards a circular economy where we not only rethink, but we redesign products and components and the packaging that they come in so that the waste from today could be used as a resource for tomorrow. 2 years ago, I founded Clean City, which is a not-for-profit social enterprise that works with the local government, private companies, conservation groups, and cooperatives to set up a profitable, sustainable waste management model in Chitwan, Nepal. I also work for Good Market, which is a not-for-profit social enterprise that originated in Sri Lanka. And it now has networks spanning in 37 countries with representatives from 1,500 enterprises. So Good Market is a curated platform that makes it easier to find and connect with social enterprises, responsible businesses, and change makers that are striving to create a better world.
Water is one of the most integral components of the circular economy, and perhaps one of the most overlooked. When you consider talking about the circular economy, most of the discussion is around waste. But the reality is water is key to our life, and water in itself is treated very linearly. We take it, we use it incredibly inefficient, we pollute it, we sometimes treat it up to half the standard it was at, and then we send it off into the river and hope that nature does the rest. So what Smart Bunny has been doing the past 8 years is rethinking this. We've basically created a circular way for people to use water by recognizing the value of the water on your roof, the value of the water on surfaces, and treating it for use so that people use less water from these over-extracted sources. We've focused on making rainwater harvesting, water filtration, and wastewater recycling economical for our customers. The majority of the systems are actually financially viable to our clients, and that's the importance of looking at water differently. It actually has benefits not just for business, but for the end user as well. Instead of taking water from really deep down, spending a lot of money to filter it, treating it, forgetting to treat it, letting the next city down the stream, why not close that loop yourself?
Thanks. I think it's a good opening round. We get perspectives from, four diverse perspectives, but looking at a similar issue around how do you connect with the circular economy? How are you looking at recycling, reusing, reducing, reducing the import of bitumen? So I think we can just go around and maybe start with Kushal in terms of what are some of the opportunities you have seen and where you just feel that, wow, this is something we have been able to do, and where are some of the challenges?
Let me start with the challenges. Behavioral change, I would say, is one of the biggest challenges that we deal with. In terms of, we all talk about the 3 Rs, the reduce, reuse, recycle, segregate your waste at source and all that, but how many of us really bother to do it? So that's really the crux of the biggest challenge that we deal with, and I say that's not just across in waste, it's across the spectrum when it comes to, if you're looking at circular economy as a whole. It relates with water, etc. So at present, what's going on here in Nepal is only high-value items are recycled, which, say, for example, we're talking about aluminum, metal, paper, etc. But a lot of low-value items that have negative recycling value, like plastics, are typically dumped. Also, when you're talking about recycling, what's happening in Nepal is most of it is not being recycled. Most of it is being downcycled. So some of the main challenges that we deal with is plastics are very difficult to recycle. There are very few industries that manage it. There is no glass recycling in Nepal, so I'm not sure most of you know this or not. Another challenge that we deal with is, as I said, it's packaging materials and composites. When you talk about wrappers, for example, because there's such a thin layer of aluminum in there with the plastic itself that it's impossible to extract. Universally, globally, there are no solutions for it at the moment.
Two quick questions. One is on electronic waste. Do you see that? How's that? You're saying, is this that's being collected, and is there recycling happening around electronic waste? And the second specific is that you said, to recycle Tetra Pak or something, you would need large investments for a facility. So how big are those investments?
So when it comes to electronic waste, it's a burgeoning problem that no one really is talking about or dealing with. The difficulty, the frustration, and the challenge is the fact that the government has made no policies for e-waste. It has made it not possible to recycle it here. At the same time, they haven't made it possible to export it. Now, in terms of Tetra Pak recycling, PET plants, etc., these are, again, at least we're talking $30, $40 million. I don't know the exact figures, but because we haven't gotten there yet in terms of, thinking about it. But the volumes don't exactly support it out here in Nepal yet. And overall, the volumes do, but the collection systems are not there yet.
Rikesh, you want to talk about some of the things that the opportunities you're seeing and also some of the challenges.
Being first is it's always good, being the first one to do something, it's always good. But the challenge, it was huge. But I took it very very casual. I was young at the time, and then going to the ministry and talking about I'm going to change how the roads are being built in Bhutan. People they actually laughed at me, but nothing stopped me. I built the first road in 2015, and then the road has not been repaired so far. And I also happened to build the first road in India, Chennai. That was 14 years ago now, and the road is still there. The problem was, when I was building roads that were lasting more than 4 years, I had this, private contractors coming to me and then telling me, they don't worry about the giving better roads to the municipal or the department. They have to repair the same road next year because they get some money out of it, So I was trying to change all that. The next thing is the policy intervention. Now, on the other hand, the government wants us to be very innovative, bring new ideas to the system. But on the other hand, the government has a very strict procurement policies, So what we are trying to do is to advocate people to actually reduce, refuse, refurbish, repair, because recycling is the last option for us. As a waste entrepreneur, as an entrepreneur myself, and then what we are trying to do is we are trying to advocate, to educate more on the not to be a consumerist society.
It's so interesting. I'm also getting, so I'm just being mindful of the time. I'll come back to you. So maybe I'll just go to Taylor to talk about some of the challenges you've been facing and, some of the opportunities you've been saying. Yes,
Thank
looking
you.
at, yeah.
I do want to just mirror, I think behavioral change, Dr. Krop mentioned, as well as Kushal, is first and foremost the greatest challenge that we face. We work a lot with educating schools and also awareness campaigns to reduce plastic pollution, but also focus on the importance of waste management and how everyone needs to, consider the waste that we each create, right? So behavioral change first and foremost. The second greatest challenge is trying to convince people the benefit of cooperation and collaboration as opposed to competition in the traditional business sense. If you reach a minimum criteria or standard, whatever sector of the economy you're working in, and you are good market approved, and you are a part of this platform and this greater community, then other people can find you. And that sort of transparency builds trust between enterprises, between individuals, and that's the sort of change-making mentality we need to have. It's not about producers and consumers. It's about individuals and organizations who are collectively making choices to create the societal change, because we can't wait for the government. We can't wait for corporations like Coca-Cola and CG to make the right decision.
Thanks.
Normally, people don't think rainwater is drinkable, which in the context of circularity doesn't matter as much because the amount of drinking water you use is very limited. But the fact that people think it is dirty is a challenge. The second biggest challenge is the fact that people think that you need a very large storage to make maximum use of your rainwater. Because our biggest challenge is perception. And I think everybody has already mentioned individual behavior change. But these perceptions are some of the bigger challenges you face when you're implementing these things. And a lot of that is caused by, there was a lot of good work done in the past, but there's a lot of work done in the past that was just one-off work. And as a result, a lot of the older systems are non-functional because there's no supply chain, there's no value chain to kind of create and maintain the systems that were installed. The second is we talk about the linear use of everything. It's the same as true in water. A lot of people, a lot of industries, when you look at the wastewater discharge standards of Nepal, it talks about chemical and biological toxins, but it doesn't always cover persistent bioaccumulating chemicals. And that makes the reuse of water very challenging. And third, I think, is the biggest challenge is land prices. You look at these sky-rising towers, they're building up very tall because of the fact that land is so expensive. And if you look at the amount of water they need versus the land area they occupy, they need something like 15 times more water than actually falls on the land, where that's not true for a house. So people come and they're like, oh, we want to harvest rainwater for our apartment, and it's basically useless. Now, opportunities, I mentioned the land area. Kathmandu and Nepal has abundant rainfall. It is an opportunity, but the opportunity exists in that shallow groundwater that I mentioned. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you could get water at 2 meters deep, 3 meters deep. And still when it rains, you can. But before you could in the dry season. That is an opportunity to look.
Thanks. I think it's a lot of issues coming up. And before I open up the floor for discussions, two things. I'll come back for your closing remarks. Yeah, okay, let me just, one last question to you, Rikesh. I know I cut you down, cut you off, but in terms of the cost of building roads, vis-a-vis the traditional roads, like you build through bitumen and recycled, through plastic, what's the cost difference like?
It is cheaper. It is cheaper using waste plastic.
Okay.
So until last year, what I was doing was I was just collecting the raw materials, the plastic waste from the landfill, from source collection, and then I was supplying it to the contractors. But in my end, it wasn't a viable business because the plastic had to be cheaper than bitumen. The whole idea was that. And that was the whole presentation that I was giving to the government. So it wasn't viable. So what I did was I invested in asphalt plant, the whole setup, the machines required for blacktopping of roads. For instance, recently I did an approach road for the Deputy Chamberlain of His Majesty. So on a personal level, they're very proud because they have used certain portion of the plastic waste in that road, So this is how we are going about, and then this business is in terms of using the whole plastic, the whole setup is a viable process. Yeah, it's a viable business.
Thanks. Okay, so we would now move on to sort of interventions from the floor.
Rikesh, in terms of the cost for payment, cost for this plastic recycled plastic material in lieu of bitumen, you said that it is cheaper than bitumen. But in terms of the quality of construction, have you gone through it? Have you monitored it? What is the performance, the quality of construction?
My question is to Kushal and Tyler. In your opinion, how would data actually play a role in behavior change? How do you think quantity would be associated with behavior change and with the circular economy? Thank you.
I would ask Taylor as well as Smart Pani. One, we're trying to have this circular economy concept rolling in Godavari area with municipality. How do we work with government, private sector, community together?
It's an open question to 4 of our panelists. If they could share what is their motivation, what kicks them to work in this sector.
Thank you.
The plastic roads are durable, first thing first. So the first road that I did 4 years ago, that particular stretch was the most, most used road in the capital city. For that particular stretch, the municipal was spending 150-meter stretch. The municipal was spending 800,000 rupees every 6 months. Every 6 months, okay? Now I have saved that into 8 times now. That's more than 50 lakhs rupees. So the roads are very durable.
Clean City is not here to spearhead. We are here to support a community that's taking initiative to set up waste management and to address the underlying issues. So what we do is we provide technical expertise and financial support. And we brought 2 waste engineers from the US to assess the landfill in January of this year, produce a feasibility study, and then using low-cost solutions that don't require, a geosynthetic membrane from Australia. So the challenges we're facing in the Terai are different than that of Gorkha, or, I just came back from Manaslu and Sum Valley, which is being threatened by the roads and construction from China. So it's really important to not go into it with a one-size-fits-all, and this is the solution. So thank you.
Quality's impact on behavior change is extremely important. If you're trying to influence someone's behavior, as I mentioned earlier a bit, if the solution you give them doesn't address their needs or isn't durable or isn't a quality solution, then they're going to automatically have a negative perception. Now on to Anuji's question about wastewater treatment. I think this actually goes a little bit back to your question on government policy and private sector as well, because if you're building a housing colony or you're building a house, you are required to build a certain type of wastewater treatment system. And I think that's where the government has to come on board and intersect with the private sector. What is the minimum standard of wastewater treatment plant? But with a housing colony, almost all of them are supposed to have that wastewater treatment. So it's not just a cost thing, it's actually a requirement. I think that's where the government has to be involved a bit more.
Data, you know how they say knowledge is power? I think the generation that we live in is data is power. Having to be able to provide transparency can really affect how behavior changes. Really, if you talk about behavioral change, why should I do something? If you can see, if you can measure what impact you're having, it will make a difference in terms of why you would want to do something. Data can also be used to make better systems in terms of behavioral change and also in terms of improving the systems of collection and circular, making it, closing the loop.
Thanks. So we go for our last round. So maybe you can just have a quick answer to that and to look at that one thing that we can do next.
So it's been 2.5 years that me and my friends, me and my partners, we started on this journey. And let me tell you, it's been tough. So it does get challenging. It does get demotivating. There are days where you feel like, man, how did I end up here? But those are the days when but when you think back and when you think about what you're doing and the impact that we've been able to have in the last 2 years in terms of accelerating the conversation about waste, in terms of making people more aware why we need it, the waste crisis that we have at hand and why it's time we all wake up. That impact in terms of being able to showcase models for better and efficient waste management, that sort of impact, that really motivates me as an individual. And also I feel, all of us have to do something for a living. So if we are able to do something that is economically beneficial to us also, hopefully in the long term, to society and to nature, why not? If you can combine all of that, we're in that sweet spot of an industry where more profitability means more environmental impact, a better impact. So that is a big drive for us.
Thank you.
Waste handlers like ourselves, they play a very important role in the whole circular economic value chain, I believe. And then, people usually ask me this question when I say that I have built 70 kilometers of road. Wow, started making a lot of money, Of course, yes. But then, what I'm so proud about is the people that I've employed in the company, 45 people, and then the amount of money that is being saved. So these are things that keeps me motivated. And as an entrepreneur, giving up is the easiest thing to do. And I cannot give up at this moment right now.
I would say that what we need to do is start by looking at it as an ecosystem. So all of our work is interconnected in some way. And I think if everyone is doing their part and collaborating and really working towards sort of this common goal, then that's where a lot of opportunities for new enterprises emerge to fill in the gaps. For me personally, that's what keeps me going. I started this, and I think I'm kind of crazy. But I think that by continually meeting people like Kushal and Rakesh and Shishila and all the people out here who continually inspire me to work towards something that prioritizes people on the planet, then it's like, well, if they're crazy enough to do it, then I can be too.
I think when you're a committed entrepreneur, I'm sure even Sujeev has that point, you're committed to a problem, which means that you're struggling every day. And why I wanted to start this, and I'm sure it motivates, is because I wanted to do something genuine about the problem, and I saw something that worked, and I saw an opportunity to take action, both on the individual, but on a scalable level, and hopefully not just in Nepal, but outside as well. But I think what motivates me beyond just the general impact of recycling water, recharging rainwater, people saving money, kids getting clean water, what motivates me on that fact is there are now 30 people working for Smart Piney. 12 of them are plumbers. half of them weren't even trained in technical schools. These are all the type of people who would go abroad, but instead they're employed working towards solving a problem and also generating value for people among all segments of society. And I have people who are working who have changed their career trajectories because they believe in what we do. And I think that's what keeps me going on a day-to-day basis beyond just what the company does.
Thank you. This is very inspiring. I wouldn't like to summarize the session, but I think the three key words I took away, three key concepts would be, one is that on learning, the other is definitely about individual behavior is at the center of it, and how do you go about. And finally, I think one of the questions that was prompted, and that's made me thinking now, is that one of the next things we have never looked at is, you brought in about the issue of blockchain. To look at really data, blockchain, how is that going to facilitate this? I think definitely accelerate the process, make the process more transparent. A round of applause to our panelists. Thank you so much.